photography depends on the quality of light and color. Only well-adjusted colors can make a photograph pleasant to look at. White balance is the key, but many digital photographers don't pay enough attention to it, as they assume that they can fix it in post-production. However, without a neutral reference point, this is impossible. That is why, for high-end digital photography, the use of white balance tools is imperative. The most common tools are the gray card, the ColorChecker passport, and the ExpoDisk. An 18% gray card is first and foremost a tool for measuring the exposure and determining film development times according to the zone system. Some photographers use it as a white balance tool as well. They place the gray card in the scene, take a photograph of the scene, and now they've got a raw file with a neutral reference point, the gray card. Off of this neutral reference point, they can determine the correct light balance settings by using the color picker tool and placing it on the gray card. The results can then be copied to all images shot under the same lighting circumstances. I call this method the reflective method, as the idea is that all the light is reflected onto a neutral surface, so that there is this common ground where you can base the white balance settings upon. However, I strongly advise against using a standard 18% gray card for that purpose. Most of these gray cards are not color neutral, which means that using them for that purpose, you would introduce a color cast to all the images. Only use your gray card if the manufacturer explicitly states that it is suitable for that purpose. The ColorChecker Passport by Calibrite is a specialized tool for the reflective white balance method. It consists of 4 differently colored surfaces for white balance enclosed in a hard plastic shell. The first combination consists of an 18% gray card and a specialized surface for white balance, which is perfectly color neutral. Just like with the gray card method, the color checker is placed in the scene, a raw image is taken, and this white patch is then used as a reference to create a perfectly neutral starting point and copying the results to all other raw files shot under the same lighting conditions. The other combination looks like this. Over here are color patches used for creating custom camera profiles, and over here are patches for white balance. And the interesting thing is that there are not only neutral patches, but also patches with a slightly warmer or cooler tint, enabling the photographer to consistently set a warmer or cooler color temperature independent from all lighting sources in the scene, and that's very useful. Imagine you are shooting a series under different lighting conditions but want to give it the exact same slightly warmer tone. This is very hard to do without such a reference target. So keep that in mind. If custom color grading is something you are interested in, then this is definitely very useful. Two versions of the ExpoDisk were released over the years, as well as third-party copies of varying quality. The ExpoDisk is a calibrated WhiteBalance filter that works similarly to an incident light meter. By placing the filter in front of the camera's lens and pointing it towards the main light, a WhiteBalance reference image can be taken to either set the WhiteBalance in camera or in post-production. I recommend doing both. With some practice, the photographer is able to easily determine where the WhiteBalance filter should be pointed at for best results. Some scenes require you to take the position of the subject and point the WhiteBalance filter towards where you plan to take the photograph to get a really good reading. Some photographers also use it as a tool to get an average reflective reading of the scene by just placing it over the lens and pointing the camera at the scene. I highly advise against that because the results depend on the colors present in the scene and are therefore highly inconsistent. In order to illustrate how the WhiteBalance tools work in practice, I set up a little test scene over there with an IT8 target. On the tripod is the Nikon D800 set to daylight with a 28mm 1.4. What we are going to do in the first test scenario, we will try to balance out the window light that is currently illuminating our scene by using the ColorChecker passport for the reflective method and the ExpoDisk for the incident method. It is important that the camera that is recording the scene is set to daylight WhiteBalance. So when I'll be adding different color tints to the scene, you're gonna see that on the recording. All right, let's get started. The first shot will be at the standard settings, no additional color balancing. There we go. Now for the second shot, I prepared the ColorChecker passport. And thanks to that, we've got a neutral reference point in the scene. With the incident tool, the ExpoDisk, I have to get in the scene and take the shot from the position of the subject. Perfect. For the next scenario, I turned on a video light to my right-hand side and set it to a very warm color temperature, making the scene obviously too warm. You can already see it on my face. And we're going to repeat the same process and see how these tools will help us to balance between the cooler window light and the warmer light from the LED. This is our reference shot. Let's get the ColorChecker in there. There we go. Now with the ExpoDisk, I'm trying to match the direction of the camera. And that's it. The next scene is even trickier. You'll see some blown out highlights on my face probably because I set a video light on my left hand side to full power with a very cool color temperature. So now we've got the window light, we've got the warm LED and we've got the cold LED over there. And all three have to be balanced out so that we get a satisfactory result. Let's do this. Our regular shot. Now let's get the color checker in there. There we go. And again, last but not least, the ExpoDisk. This time it's gonna be super important to get the direction of the camera lens right. Because if I move it too far over there, I'll only get the white balance information from the cooler light, and vice versa from the warmer light if I'll move it over there. So precision is key when working with incident white balance tools. I'm moving my body out of the way so that the blue color also hits the ExpoDisk. And here is our reference shot. To summarize, both methods for setting the white balance work very well. However, there are some scenarios where a reflective tool is preferable over an incident tool. When shooting on-camera flash, it is impossible to set the white balance with an incident tool. In photography scenarios like macro, reproduction, or product, it might be impossible to set the white balance with an incident tool because of the short distance between the main lights and the subject. On the other hand, in outdoor and landscape scenarios, an incident tool might be much more convenient to use, as it provides you with instant white balance preview out in the field. I myself tend to use reflective white balance tools far more often, as they are more suitable for my workflow. However, I always keep an incident tool in my camera bag as well. Thank you very much for watching. Consider following me on Instagram and subscribing, and see you next time.